Welcome to Conversations at the Crossroads, the podcast where spirituality meets the beautifully messy experience of being human. I'm Jenny, tarot reader, Reiki practitioner, witch, mentor, and hairstylist, and the voice behind Conversations at the Crossroads. Each week, we gather here at the Crossroads to explore spirituality, personal growth, and tools that help us navigate an ever evolving human journey. Sometimes conversations will dive into the mystical, others into the practical, and other times we'll just sit together through the hard stuff. Along the way, we may explore ideas that challenge us, stories that shift our perspective, or practices to help us walk our path with a little more intention. So, wherever you're coming from, take a breath, settle in, and join me on the crossroads. Welcome back to the Crossroads. Today's guest is someone whose story starts exactly where a lot of ours do, showing up for a life that looked fine on paper while something inside was quietly, persistently asking for more. Ainsley James is a writer, author, and mentor who made the leap from the life she had to the one she actually wanted. And turned around and built a whole space to help other women do the same. Through her workshops and mentorship, she guides women through the process of getting their own stories out there, out of their bodies, onto the page and into the world. We're going to talk today about who she was before the shift, the moment that cracked everything open, and what it actually means to own your story and how you move from shame all the way to audacity. And I want to know everything about how she got there. So this one's going to go a little deep. I'm really glad you're here for it. Ainsley James, welcome to the Crossroads.
Thank you so much, Jenny. I'm very happy to be here with you.
I'm so grateful that you agreed to come on.
Yes.
So I mean, I know I just introduced you, but is there anything that else that you want to add? Tell us about you, who Ainsley James is.
Yeah, absolutely. So you did a great job, author, book coach, and self-proclaimed hype girl bestie. I love helping women tell the story of their heart. It's been a thing that jokingly call a coping mechanism that turned into an obsession. And I know how powerful the art of storytelling, especially for women, is for moving you to that next level in your life.
So I believe I heard you mention that you write vampire smut as well.
That is my, so while I will coach women to write, basically any kind of book, whether it's nonfiction or fiction, my preferred genre is what I call vampire romantasy. So, yes, slutty vampires.
I love that. I do. I'm a romantasy girl. I think reading romance and smut is an act of feminism, personally.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I'm here for it. I love it. It's like everyone else in society sexualizes women all the time, but as soon as they are put in sex into anything, it's like, so
Yeah.
I think it's really wonderful when women take the reins and use that tool that is often used against us and create with it. So just to add on to all of that, I'm proud of you for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So before all of this, before the shift, before the books and the workshops and the leap, who were you? Like, paint us a picture of who that woman was.
Yeah, I think the easiest way to explain who I was is that I was a person obsessed with changing my stars. I grew up in mass suburbia in Metro Detroit, so in Michigan. I remember distinctly um, being about 20 years old and getting all dressed up. So I was probably wearing a Hollister skirt and some kind of like, multi-layered tank top and did my hair and makeup, and I was going out with my boyfriend, and we were going to go to a basement party in our friend's basement. We were going to play beer pong and cards and sit around and gossip about the same people that we went to high school with. And I remember starting to feel like if I have to go to another basement party, I might die. Um, and I knew then that I wanted to be successful so bad, but I didn't have the support or like the building blocks or the mentor to really know what success looked like for me. All I knew is that I was exhausted of living the life that I was living.
I mean, I can relate to that where it's like you look around and at your life and you're like, this, I'm not getting anything out of this. This, and I don't understand how this used to even light me up, or I just have so outgrown this. When I did my episode after Elevate and Inspire, and I talked about feeling like looking at certain things and feeling like they were a coat that I outgrew without
Mm,
even noticing. Like you one day put it on and it doesn't fit, and you're like, wait a minute, what the fuck is this about? You know?
yeah, when you look around at your life and you say, I know I'm meant for so much more than this, but I don't really know what the next right step is. Um, but I will say, just because of the way that was raised and who I am, and maybe it's my Virgo-ness, I don't know. I always had a belief that I was smart and that I could accomplish a lot. Like if I put my mind to it and I figured it out, I could do something really impressive with my life.
So, what do you think past AJ was telling herself to keep her to stay where she was?
Hmm. Well, I didn't have a lot of, again, I didn't have a lot of like resources. I was, mentally unwell. We'll start there. I grew up in a very tumultuous childhood. There was really a lack of like stability and good male role models. I struggled with anxiety since I was, probably in third grade. Didn't have a name for it until I was a teenager. Looking back on who I was just basically using alcohol as a coping mechanism for anxiety and, the fear of I don't know what's happening in my life, or what's how to fix me, and the untethered feeling that I think a lot of late teens, early 20s feel when they don't have a lot of direction or guidance.
Yeah. I was, I'm an only child of, um, my parents were both addicts. And like, so I left home. I say at 17 because I really was like out of there as much as I could be, like staying on couches and stuff. But I officially really left home at 18 as soon as I turned 18. And that, where do I go? Like, how do I even make
Right.
anything happen for myself? Like, seeing your friends who have parents that are filling out college applications with them and seeing people who have resources and being like, okay, so I don't have any of that. Like, what are we gonna do about it? You know?
Right. That's now again, I had a different lived experience. I didn't grow up with two addicts. I grew up with a very different experience. I don't know how deep to get into it, so I can't exactly understand what you went through, but I mean, I was nodding my head and resonating with a lot of that because you are exactly right. So you want to talk about something that kept me small, the chip that I had on my shoulder, that I was smart. I remember that like a couple days before I left for the military, because I ended up the way I got out of my town was that I joined the military. But I remember one of my friends that I'd known since middle school telling me, I mean, I was just turned 21 at this point. He said, it's a shame that someone like you has to join the military. And I remember, I mean, I was excited and I was going to do my best. I mean, I had orders to go to San Diego. So I was like, hell yeah, I'm going, California, getting out of here. But I remember feeling like had this not happened, had that not happened, had I had a college fund, I would be at Michigan State right now working on my, bachelor's degree and I would be, you know what I mean? Like making these things happen in my life, but I instead had no support, not not 1 ounce of support for that. Yeah.
It's good that you decided to like. You're like, I'm going to find my own way. I'm going to find my own method. You
Yes.
weren't like, oh, well, there's nothing. Like, you're like, well, actually, I'm going to just find the direction. I'm going to find the thing.
And I think that that has served me my entire life is that hitting a dead end for me, I'm always like, all right, am I getting a shovel? Am I digging my way
Yeah.
underneath? Am I scaling this wall? Am I plowing through it with a dump truck? I always feel like, all right, let's solve the next problem and move the chess piece forward on the board.
So it sounds like you really already knew you were meant for something different
Yeah.
from the beginning.
Yeah.
Did that get more cemented later once you got out and started learning and seeing other environments and stuff? Like, did that get just more and more validated?
Yeah, 100%. I'm a lifelong learner. I believe like knowledge is the key to unlocking, your success. And I don't mean like just sitting around and just learning things because you can just get caught up. Like you got to spend the time learning and then take action. And then when you need to learn, go back and learn something and then take more action. So I feel like I really like that really propelled me forward. I had a goal to get my bachelor's degree. And so I joined the military and I didn't make all the right choices. Let me say this. I had a baby within my first 2 years. I was divorced within the first 3, 4 years of being in the military. Like, personally, I was still not healed. Like, I was still, using alcohol as a coping mechanism. And at that point, physical exercise too, because I learned that I actually was a really good runner when I put my mind to it. And then I had motherhood. I really believe this is wild, and I've never told my son this, but I really believe that my son was like my father in a past life. And every time I say it, I get chills. Like I know it to be true because he was born when I was 23 years old. And it was almost like he came into my life and he was like, all right, stop fucking around. It's time to get your life together. And yeah,
On your spirit team watching, and he's like, all right, I'm going in. Like,
put me in, coach. Yeah, he did. He came in, and having him in my life, immediately I said, this marriage isn't great. I need to provide for my son. And that means I need to put all of my shit into one sock and get my life together. And so I ended up applying for this officer commissioning program. And that allowed me to go to college for 3 years, and the Navy was going to pay for it. And everybody laughed at me when I said I was going to do this. Everybody laughed at me. Like, now, some people did believe in me, and some people really helped me, and I owe a lot of what happened that to their help and their belief. Their help and their belief only came because I was so motivated and driven. And nobody said, everybody was like, you have a baby, you've never been to a ship, you don't have a pin, you're not gonna get selected for this program, yada yada yada. All the like naysays. Like anytime, even if you've never been in the military, anytime you want to do something and you're like, no, I'm doing that, and everybody's telling you otherwise, and you're just like, no, you don't understand, it's happening. Well, guess what? It happened. I got picked up. I got selected for this program, and I was able to take my child and be with him and go to college, was my goal, and had the military pay for it, which was my other goal. So, and when it was over, I graduated and received a commission as an ensign, and my salary greatly increased. And shortly after that, I bought my first home.
oh, wow.
Yeah, which is
So,
wild
like,
because
the
my
universe was
parents,
like, here, let's
yeah,
just give you all, you've decided to do something different for yourself. So you're just going to get all the things now.
yeah, I did. I also picked up another husband. I had another child.
Yeah.
Like, I still wasn't like healed, right? I still was repeating like really, really difficult personal patterns that I've thankfully been able to on my healing journey and healed many of them. But at that point, I was still kind of a disaster because what do you do with somebody who just believes they can do anything? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Um,
think that's also a very Virgo trait because I
okay.
tell my husband, like, I think one of I don't know if it's a red flag or a green flag, but I'm pretty sure that I can do almost anything if I give myself all I have to do is figure out how to do it. And sometimes it
Yeah.
may take longer than others, but like I'm pretty sure I'm capable of just about anything.
100%. Yeah, same. I have that same belief. And I know that that is a gift that I was given, because I know not everybody grows up having that. And, I always say for all the damage that my mother did in my early life, she did not give me the damage of like religious trauma. Where I was told that I was to be subservient to men and that, I was evil if I had premarital sex and, drinking was the devil. And like, there wasn't like a lot of shame put on me. I put like shame on my mom. I was like, you're kind of irresponsible and not really like helpful in driving my life forward. Um, and so for me, I didn't, I recognized the privilege of not having had a lot of that religious shame put on me.
Yeah, that's really great. I also like when people talk about religious trauma, I
Mhm.
mine actually I can't say I don't have any. Mine actually came from an ex-husband that made me like
Mm.
bury my tarot cards and like said they were bringing demons in the house anyway. But my mom was Buddhist and my dad was Methodist and they were both like I don't know, it's really personal. You got to choose for yourself. So, of course, like,
Right.
young me, middle school me was like, witchcraft, like, yeah, I'm gonna be a witch, So, uh,
Yes.
that's just what I've always come back to, even though there have been times in my life where, um, it wasn't a big part of my life, or if I was doing it, I was doing it quietly because I thought people would think I was weird. There wasn't really so much acceptance in the
Oh
world,
yeah. Oh
but
yeah.
yeah, not like I'm like when I hear about people whose parents made them go to church, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry for that.
Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting thing because I um I grew up, I mean there was like we were like Christian in the sense that that was the cult, like the dominant culture, and sometimes we would go to church, and like I knew who Jesus was and stuff like that. I believed he was the savior, like, but I didn't like. Do you know what I mean? Like I didn't like. Okay, in the way that a child believes Santa Claus is real. And I also had friends. I had a friend who like definitely believed in witchcraft, and her aunt owned a new age shop to go to sometimes, and my mother was very new age, in fits and starts. She did tarot and would take me to like new age. Like I had like a tree oracle drawn when I was like 13 or something. They're like, "Oh, you drew a hole in this bark of this tree. What happened to you between ages blah blah blah?" And I was like, "Why don't you ask this bitch standing next to me?" And anyway, so as I got older and the more and more respect that I lost for my mother, the more and more I came to see her like helping spirits move on and, tarot. I came to see it as like I associated that with her in like irresponsibility, not because I was like, I think it has demons in it. I was like, I just think that you don't make good choices and this must be one of them. And as I started going to college, I took a class on what was it called? Like world myths or something like that. Where basically it introduced like how Christianity is like a myth, just like any of the other myths. And I became an atheist. I was like, all of this is just stories people tell each other because they're afraid of dying, which I relate to because I'm also afraid of dying, like highly anxious. And I was like, I'm just going to pretend like none of it exists. And so after that, I was an atheist for, I don't know, almost 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did when did that change for you?
Okay, so this is wild. All right. So I was, I don't know, this was, let's say, a year and a half ago. A year and a half ago, my best friend, who I call like my soul sister, we're just so connected. She said to me, I really think you need to read this book called You Are a Badass at Making Money. It's by Jen Sincero. She's like, I just finished reading it. You need to read it. It's amazing. And I was like, okay. At that point, I was like deep in the paint into fiction books. Like, I'm in my fiction world if it doesn't have magic and, witches and curses and hot dudes with wings, I don't want to read it. And, but I was like in the market of like growing my coaching business. Like I was still working as a therapist. I mean, there's a long journey from how I went from military ding dong to like really unhealed person to like therapist. But we can talk about that if you want. But anyway, it's the I believe button. I became a therapist, but I really just wanted to write books and like work with other people, like work with other women who wanted to write books. Anyway, so I was still trying to like come up with ways to grow my coaching business. And so I read this book, and in Jen Sincero's book, it's called Chapter 2A, a small but mighty chapter on universal intelligence. And she talks about how gratitude is the currency of the universe, and how when you're so grateful for something, you get more things. Like if you make cookies for someone and they say, "Oh my God, these cookies are amazing. Thank you so, so, so much." You're like, "I'm gonna make them more cookies." But if they just like have a cookie and like say thanks, or they're like, "Oh, peanut butter is actually my favorite and these are chocolate chip," like you're not gonna be making that person any more cookies. Like they don't get cookies.
Yeah.
And this, as dumb as this might sound, that analogy, along with some of the other ways that she explains universal intelligence, changed me from an atheist to a believer again, which is wild because it's a book about money.
Was
Yeah,
that around the time too? So was that like the catalyst that broke you out of like
yes,
your regular 9 to 5 to like, I'm gonna do actually what I want to do?
yes,
Was like, there's usually something that like breaks you up open and is like, nah, I'm done with this phase.
yes. Yeah, that was it. That was it. I started consuming a lot because again, I really believe in mental plasticity. I think it's one of the best things if you're not really mentally plastic, or you don't have a lot of like mental plasticity, I suggest working on that. Like if you believe a thing and you cannot hear a word about it otherwise, like you are really rigid in your beliefs about something, I would do an exercise of trying to increase your mental plasticity to be able to like at least hear or be open to new ways of thinking. That's how I've lived my entire life, was really just being open to new information and taking it in. So in the same way that a myth class was like, and kind of like my upbringing made it easy for me to just be like, oh, well, obviously this is all made up garbage, and like close the door to me on like spirituality. This book reintroducing the idea of gratitude and the universe, like reopened it up. And once the door was cracked open, I'm consuming literature. I'm deep in the paint into how this all works. I'm like reading book on how quantum physics and like spirituality connect. And it's become, I mean, to this day, I listen to every single YouTube video Dr. Joe Dispenza has about like, getting your thoughts in line with your beliefs. And anyway, so yeah, it absolutely changed my life. And coming back home to my own personal spirituality allowed me to take the next leaps to like move on in my life.
Like gave you that permission to say like, all right, I'm ready for the next thing. I'm ready for something more. I deserve something more.
Yeah, because that little girl that I talked about, the 20-year-old all dressed up to go to a basement party, who believed that there was something else available to her but felt like she didn't have any support, I look back on it and I'm like, the whole time I did. Like the whole time, even when I was like, nobody in my family supports me. I don't have any college money. Like, no, like this like me, like blame, 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 excuses, excuses. I did have like I had the universe, I had spirit, I had a co-creator, whatever you want to call that. I was connected for free to everything that I ever wanted, and I just didn't realize it.
That just gave me chills. That
Mm,
like I thought didn't have any support and I did the whole time. Like
yeah.
aha moment, you know? Though
Yeah.
even in the times where we feel like we are the most alone, like we are not ever. There is divine guidance and support somewhere in whatever you call it. I call it Gus, which stands for God, Universe, and Source. It's
Ooh, okay.
whatever you choose, whatever you label it as. To me, it's just like the source of, and it all comes, I believe, from like love and stuff. But like Gus is always there hanging out in the background looking out for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so cool.
100%. I was just telling this story. I have a beloved pet. His name is Rocky. He's laying next to me, and he's a big fat ragdoll cat. And we have the same birthday. He is also a Virgo. Okay. He's gonna be 8 years old this year, so he's been with me for a long time. And Rocky's favorite pastime is to jump into my bathtub and like stare lovingly up at me with his big blue eyes and wait for me to turn on the water so that he can drink. Okay. And he has the softest meow you've ever heard. And he often he doesn't meow. I'll be brushing my teeth and I'll look over and I'll see him staring at me. And I'm like, oh, you want some water? And I'll turn the water on. Well, a couple years ago, we got another cat, a female cat, and she thinks she owns the house. Okay. When I turn the water on for him, she'll hear it, run into the bathroom and like jump on the tub and like she'll be like slurping up the water like in his way and she's literally half the size of him. I'm like, Rocky, get her. I'm like, attack her. Like get her out of here. This is your water. Like she drinks water out of the bowl, right? She doesn't like Rocky won't do that. He wants to drink out of the tub. And same thing with his food. If she eats so fast, I feed them both at the same time. She eats her food and he'll just eat what he's hungry for and then he'll walk away and she'll eat all of his food. And I'm like, Rocky, you gotta eat faster. She's eating your food. Okay, I had a moment. I was like, oh my God, my cat trusts me. He knows that I'm going to provide for him. He knows I'm going to give him more water if she gets in his way. Like, I'm not going to let him go thirsty. He knows that I'm going to feed him more food. In fact, I'm going to give him some special food that I'm going to put up in his bowl in his room so he'll have it at night that she doesn't get. He knows that. He trusts that. And so, why would he need to attack her or be stressed out if she jumps in or eats his food? He doesn't care. He's getting fed. And that's the trust I realize that I'm needing to build in the universe or Gus, as you say. Like, that's the trust that I don't need to like run around and be all worried and trying to figure it out. Like, I'm gonna get fed. It's gonna happen.
Your Ainsley is gonna turn the water on for you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's so
So
cool.
thank you. So it was my like huge revelation I had staring at my cat.
So that's amazing. So you went from being an atheist and like you went
Yes.
through all of these journeys of like being in the military, lots of
Yeah.
personal stuff, lots of personal growth.
Yes.
Um, no longer being an atheist, opening up to the universe, that kind of being the catalyst. And is that what kind of gave you permission to like leave your job? Because you left your job to like do what you're doing now, right?
Yes, I did. It was a catalyst. I think it was part of this thing that I've kind of like always known that I was meant for more. BTW therapists aren't allowed to have tip jars, but they absolutely should have tip jars, and they don't get paid a lot of money. I mean, I had a moment where I was getting my toes done, and I realized that the girl doing my nails made more per hour than I did, like with a tip. And I have like a master's degree. And hours and like hundreds of hours of like clinical experience. But anyway, I had this moment where I was like, this is not where I'm supposed to be. Ever since I started writing, all I wanted to do was write. Like I wanted to drop out of grad school to write. I wanted to drop out of residency to write multiple times. And I said, I cannot justify earning what peanuts I'm earning, working as hard as I'm earning, working, um, to keep doing this job. And right, as much as I loved my job, and I also believed it was an important stop in my healing path because learning how to be a good listener and a therapist taught me how to be a better friend. It taught me how to be a better partner. It taught me how to be a better mother. It taught me how to just like be a better human. And it really like has set me up, like given me a lot of skills that I didn't have in the past.
So I was a corporate educator in the hair industry for like 6 years. And, you know, the thread that's always come through everything that I do is that need and want to help people feel good and confident about themselves.
Mhm.
And I don't know that it was necessarily the subject matter. I mean, I was passionate about it, but I needed to go through that time and learn those skills. And I really think that my drive to go that route was to get the leadership skills that I needed and learn how to teach to people so that I can use that in the spiritual community. So I can take that and instead of teaching hairstylists, which I do love and I did really enjoy, and I can say I had some of the most rewarding times doing that work. I think that I did that to be so that I could be where I'm at now on my journey,
Right.
on my path to be a spiritual mentor and to teach witchcraft and to teach different tools of developing your own practice. So sometimes like we make pit stops in life and they're not pit stops in the way that like we're wasting time. It's like we had to go there to fully incubate to become what we need to be for the next phase.
Oh, absolutely. Like sobbingly grateful for the experience and for the people that I worked with. Like their stories will always be with me. And I learned from their stories and learned from their growth too. They were all very important.
So what did it feel like to make the decision to go?
It was really tough because even my therapist was like, you should just finish residency. Um, I still would have probably had another year left to finish my clinical hours to earn my full license. And it was becoming like now I loved my work, but like the act of like going to work became so unbearable because I really felt like I was just not where I was supposed to be. Made a switch temporarily to like I tried doing telehealth, like just working from home. I was like, maybe if I'm working from home and I'm not driving there every day, maybe it'll feel like better. But once I was gone, I was like, no, I need to put in my notice. This is it. And part of my transformation to be able to get to that point was again, my soul sister, she was like, hey, I know you're trying to run this coaching business to like be able to quit your therapy job. You should probably follow Christina Knapp. She lives in our area and she does messaging and her stuff is like really good and you should just follow her and like maybe you'll get inspired. Well, right around that same time, it was like March of last year, Christina started doing in-person meetups. And I remember I like saw a client in the morning and left work. Like I had canceled a session or something to be able to go to Christina's live event, like in-person event. And then I had to go back to work afterwards. And I went and like I think about the woman who went to Christina's, if you've never been to Christina Knapp, like Elixir Media Co., if you've never been to one of her events, whether it's her free meetups or, like a different event she runs, she is so inspiring. She is so audacious. She was exactly the person who I needed to hear from and be inspired from. And I'm like endlessly grateful to her because I started going and being around other audacious women who wanted to be in business, who were way further along in their business than I was, or who were also starting out. And I was like, this is where I need to be. And that became my church. That became every month Christina had an event, I went. And when she said, I'm doing a retreat in Italy, I said, sign me up. Even though, like, it was made no, I didn't even have a passport. But I was like, I know I need this. I need to be around other women who are working towards their goals and believe in it, that it's possible. Like, show me the way. And so I quit my job in August and it was kind of wild. And then I went to Italy in October.
Wow. You just
Yeah.
took the full plunge. You said, "Let's go."
Yeah, I said we're all in. And, one of the things that like Dr. Joe says a lot is like, if not now, then when? Like, when are we going to change? When are we going to start living in like alignment with our fullest self? Like, when are we going to stop telling ourselves the stories that we can't do it or we're not smart enough to do it or we can't figure it out? Like, when are we going to stop doing that and become the person that does? And so that was kind of the beginning of my the next step of my like becoming process. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
So, I mean, to even just be like, I'm gonna get a passport and literally leave the country so I can. It was like your eat, pray, love moment.
It was a little wild. Yeah. I'm
That
so
must
I'm
have
so
felt
grateful.
so freeing.
Yeah.
So once you've left, and now you're in your writing era, you
Hmm.
talk a lot about, owning your story. So what is that, what does that mean? Because I think a lot of people hear that and they nod along but they're not really sure what that looks like in practice. So because you're coaching women also now.
Yeah.
So when you're telling them like to own their story, what does that mean to you? And what does that look like?
Yeah, when I was working as a therapist, right, I would often work with like my boss kind of niched me into, and I was totally fine with working with. I called like a Taylor Swift client, somebody who she has a song lyric that says, "I'm so productive, but I cry a lot." Um, like basically like folks that have anxiety or depression, but who are incredibly high functioning in their lives, and so they need a more nuanced assessment of their symptoms because they are deeply depressed. They cry a lot and they struggle with incredible thoughts that go directly against how insanely successful they are, right? Why? Well, I slowly realized that as humans, we stitch together our stories that we tell about ourselves or that other people tell about us over the course of our lives like it's a quilt, okay? And if you think about a quilt, when I look at some quilts, I'm always like, why did you choose that ugly piece of fabric to put on that quilt? God, it doesn't even go with the pattern. Like, couldn't you have picked one that would have went with the other color? Okay, that is exactly what we do, right? Some squares, like some of these stories that we stitch together don't fit with the pattern, right? Some of them we love and are very proud of. But as we stitch these stories together and reaffirm who we are, most of the time we're trying to prove to ourselves or someone else how pretty the blanket is, right? And when I think of owning your story, it really means that you're greater than any of those squares, right? You are greater than any story about your past, no matter how ugly it is. And none of those stories need to define who you are becoming.
Yeah, like they can add to your perspective and experience, and
Mhm.
if anything show you what you're capable of moving through, but they
Mhm.
don't have to come with you.
Right.
Yeah.
100%. And I mean, we could stitch together a whole blanket, a whole story about ourselves, about how not good we are, you know? I mean, I certainly could have done that at any point in my life. I've been married 3 times. I have 4 children by 3 different men. Like I could continue to stitch together those negative stories into a quilt that says, I'm no good, I'm not worthy of love, I'm irresponsible. I could stitch together more and more stories, all the negative ones, until I had this blanket and cover, and I would basically drown myself. I would smother under it, right? But I'm more than any one of those things.
Yeah. I'm also relating it back to like the book, a book analogy is like if you are reading a book, right, and that the protagonist is like moving along, and then suddenly the same chapter from the beginning is right there again. They put the same chapter in, and then they put the same chapter in again. It's like, how many times would you want, like, why would you reread that same chapter over and over? This
Right.
person's moved on. They're
Yeah.
doing new things. So why would you put another copy of that chapter through all of the things they've accomplished past that?
Oh, I love that. That is such a great analogy, right? Where we're thinking thoughts and remembering stories that are not even who we are anymore. Like, if I still had a chip on my shoulder about my dad leaving my family when I was, 14 years old, 13 years old, and um and never coming back and taking all the money that my grandfather had saved up, he had told my, aunt that he had was, dog-earing for us to go to college. If I let that rule my life today, where would I be? You know? So who we are by the past doesn't have to define us today.
And we get to choose.
Yeah,
I say a lot of times, like there comes a point in time when you are moving through growing as a human being where you get to decide, like, am I going to continue to carry this forever, or am I going to like set it down and move forward? Because like you
right.
can't, it's hard to do both. If you try to do both, you're going to do it extremely slowly. So if you want to carry all of the baggage from the past and you want to like hold on to it and have it still be yours, then you're going to move much slower than if you just decide to say, okay, this was then, let it set it down and move forward. You're going to be in a much better position to
Yeah.
go further.
And, I love that perspective because, like, that baggage perspective, because I think a lot of women struggle. Like, we can say, move on from the past. We can talk about forgiveness, but like, forgive. Um, but if, let's just use the example that it's a piece of, like, if your past is a literal piece of baggage and you're holding on to it because it has so much shame, embarrassment, you're worried about, you want to set it down, right? You don't want anybody to even know about a lot of these things that are holding you back, right? The things that you like, when you think about it and you're like, ooh, ooh, like, I will do literally anything not to think about that. I will sit down and eat a gallon of ice cream. I will go out and spend $10,000. I will, go run for 15 miles. Like, I will drink a fifth of moonshine. Like, I will do anything. I would do anything to not think about it. We let that story control us. And when we come to people who are like, just set it down, just forgive, we're like, oh, of course I want to set it down. Of course I want to forget it. I've been trying to drown that story in vodka for 15 years. I've been trying to pray it away. I've been trying to, you know, um, get into such good that I don't have a spare moment to think about my thoughts because I'm working out so much. Like, I mean, you can go into any coping mechanism, um, because instead of confronting it and removing the shame and stigma around the story, we're told to just forget about it. And that generally doesn't work in my experience. It's another reason why I'm so passionate about women telling stories, because I've seen firsthand when a woman, I mean, myself and others, when you start writing down the things that you carry shame around and you actually start putting them into words, guess what? They're not just thoughts in your head anymore that carry shame. They are just they're just words on paper. You have transcribed them from this racing thought to the paper. And then, right, uh so many, what I've learned about counseling, oftentimes then the next step is the compassionate witness, right? It's not just you writing it down. It's then you telling that story to someone else who was like, girl, same, or wow, that I don't know who you are today, the fact that you survived that, the fact that you lived through that, the fact that you accomplished that, the fact that you overcame that is inspiring to me. And now that thing that you thought was so shameful, that you hid for years because you were worried about who this and that was going to think about it, that thing that you were so worried about became the thing that just bonded you so deeply to another person.
So do you think that's kind of how you move from having shame around your story to moving from shame to audacity, like
Yeah,
going from being somebody who's like stuck in their story and weighed down, but like to being
yeah,
out loud and like that audacious woman archetype?
yeah. I think, one of the greatest gifts ever given is female friendships. The support of other women. I'm speaking about women, women having women in their other women in their lives who have the desire and passion and empathy and who aren't like, did you see what so and so wore the other day? Oh my God, I can't believe she would wear that. Or not those women. Stay far away from. We love them. We hope that
Yes.
one, yeah, we hope that one from a distance, yeah. We hope that one day they can meet us too in in like their fullest self. But those are not the women that I'm talking about the women that are like, yes, sis, go. Like where they believe in you and your most audacious dream. Like you could say the craziest thing and they're like, I can see you doing that next year. And there is no doubt in her at all when she says it that they believe in you. That's the kind of women I'm talking about. Those are the kind that is the best gift to anyone is a friend who believes in you with all of their heart.
So once you've like addressed your bullshit, being able to find the right community is so
Yes.
important to be able to move forward. I fully agree. Like working in the beauty industry, I've been around lots of different women, and even the first like there was a long time where I was like, it's weird that I work in an industry full of women because I don't really like to be around them. And it was the women that were in the industry that were the I was around that were the problem. It's not women in general because now when I look at my life since my mom passed away and the people that I've connected with and the community that I have, being around other strong, powerful women is so magical. In fact, that like I had to like I wanted to do a retreat and I went to Megan, the owner of the Holistic Treehouse, and I was like, I want to host a sleepaway retreat. You do day retreats. Like, do you want to do this with me? And she was like, yes. Like, I've been wanting to do it, and I haven't known if I was ready, but like now you're come bring it. So like we hyped each other up, and like now we're
Yeah.
planning a Reclaiming Sisterhood retreat in Shenandoah Valley in
Mm,
November. So
I love
um,
that.
yeah, so like having the people who see you and believe in you, it really does make a huge difference. And seeing the magic that happens when women come together with the intention of growth and transparency and vulnerability.
Oh, yeah, because I think a lot of us hold sisterhood wounds where we've been hurt by women in the past. I mean, frankly, I had been, just like I've been really bullied. I didn't have a lot of support growing up. It took me a long time to learn how to have female friends. And then when I had them, it felt like very like I was being judged. And a lot of it was probably my own stuff and what I was attracting. But I decided, I mean, I went into the military and I decided that men were a lot easier to be around, right? Because they kind of don't, no offense to the men, aren't as deep, especially younger men. They're going to be a little shallow. And often, and what I didn't realize is, yeah, like everybody likes having a cool chick around who will cook you food and be the DD or, more nefarious reasons. And it's not because they value your friendship or who you are, it's because you're a convenience. And now, not again, I know this, I'm not speaking to everybody, but I, once I started finding women that I connected with on a deeper level and allowed myself to trust in those friendships and then really call in more and more people, um, it was so amazingly transformative that, I mean, outside of my spouse, I don't think I have like an actual male friend anymore when they probably made up 99% of my friendships, 20 years ago.
Yeah. And then just I joke all the time that like and I don't know how much it's even a joke anymore, but that I say like it's time to admit that men are the weaker sex. Like
Oh, yeah.
because like they just
Secondary sex.
Yeah.
secondary sex.
Yeah. Well, just like the way that they're able to, process emotion, how they're able to handle pain. Men just have a harder time processing emotionally, mentally, like those things. I mean, if you've ever seen
Oh
a man
yeah.
stub his toe,
And yeah, and I think, the patriarchy is bad for everybody. It's bad for women, it's bad for men. Um, and, the understanding that, sometimes we're looking to men to be leaders, and sometimes that isn't their natural role, or we're actually very, very like tuned to be leaders. So just kind of like recognizing that, and if females if females are like feeling like they need to be in competition with each other, um, then um, understanding that like our the greatest way that we can create is when we are working together, not against each other. Um, so yes, that has definitely been my lived experience.
yeah, that's kind of how you move out of your that's how you grow and bloom, is really like the garden that you're planting yourself in. If you would, I think Rocky would really love that
Yeah.
analogy. Rocky from Tune Into Wellness, her Soul Garden sisters. But yeah, like the place, the area you plant yourself in will really help determine how you're going to bloom.
100%. Yeah, I believe that 100%.
So you mentioned something when we were talking before the episode planning that I'd want to get into, because I think it's going to land hard for a lot of people listening, like in the best way, is that like you don't believe you have to forgive someone to heal. I feel like I had to give myself permission to like not to be able to move on without forgiving. So like, how did that happen for you?
Yeah. This is a this is one of my favorite topics, and I really thought about it for the context of this, for this show, because I was like, where did this come from for me? And really, it started when I was doing therapy. This is my background. I call it the tarot of therapy. It's a card deck called the Live Your Values deck. And one of my supervisors was an acceptance and commitment therapy um, counselor. And in that type of therapy, values, what you value is very important. And like figuring out what matters to me, what doesn't matter to me, and what kind of matters to me, right? So this deck has 78 cards. And I would give it to folks and I would say, okay, here's three piles. Put these values in the matters most to me, matters some to me, and doesn't matter to me at all categories. And we're gonna glean some knowledge off of all this. Okay. Well, one of the cards is forgiveness. And the definition on the card, it says, to offer mercy and compassion to others, letting go of resentment. When I would do this sort for myself, like I'd be like, okay, what's my values? And by the way, your values are not fixed. You can sort them. You can get that deck off Amazon, or you can download a free little strips of paper if you Google like acceptance and commitment therapy values. There's a whole bunch of them. Anyway, you sort them into piles and be like, what matters to me and what doesn't matter to me? Forgiveness would always go into my doesn't matter to me pile. Like, I don't really care if you forgive me or not. Like, forgive me or don't forgive me. I don't care. And then I try to like interrogate that a little bit more. I'm like, I also don't like go out of my way to forgive other people. Like, if you do something to me, either it's you don't get access to me anymore, right? Or very limited access. Or I just don't even have to think about forgiving you because I love you and I know that you didn't have a malicious intent, right? It didn't even like register to me. And when people would be putting forgiveness like matters most to me, and I'd be like, can you tell me more about that? Why forgive? Like, you've ranked all your values, we've sorted them all. I've got you to now select your top 10 values. And in there, you've put forgiveness. Can you tell me more about that? And I came to understand that either their spouse had done something like infidelity, alcoholism, or their parent, and forgiving them because they had been told you need to forgive to heal was on the top of their mind. And so I just started collecting more and more information about forgiveness. And I remember being told by, now, again, I wasn't moving in spiritual circles. I was an atheist, so the umbilical cord was cut. Nobody was telling me I needed to forgive to heal, right? But I remember when I started joining spiritual communities again, people would be telling me, oh, yeah, you need to forgive that to heal. And I'd be like, what? I'm like, that doesn't even make sense to me. And the reason why that phrase actually pisses me off, like frankly, when I hear it being said, it's a little triggering. I'm like, how dare you dangle my what's dependent on my healing on something like forgiveness. I'm like, I think a lot of people conflate, they take forgiveness, they, well, if you don't forgive, then you must be feeling spiteful and petty. And and like those are low vibe thoughts, and they're gonna keep you in those low vibe stories. They're gonna keep you in rumination. And that's true. But forgiveness, it's not either I have a forgiving heart or I'm a spiteful bitch. Like there's a whole spectrum in between. And the thing that I land on is apathy. Like what you did to me, right? The root forgiveness, what it meant was to release your claim on a debt, right? That was originally the meaning of forgiveness. The Christian church kind of co-opted it to mean like this offering of mercy and compassion. And but let's go back to the original meaning of the word, because I'm an author and I like words. And I believe that we call it spelling because when we speak, we're casting spells about what we think about ourselves and other people, right?
I love that.
So if we go back to forgiveness being to release your claim on a debt. So if I forgive someone, I am releasing my claim on what was owed to me. Okay? You owed me whatever, faithfulness, a promise, etc., whatever it is, right? And you didn't live up to that bargain. And oftentimes, I didn't get an apology. You never tried to make it right. Because if I'm actually ruminating on forgiveness, you can see my soapbox has come out. If I'm actually ruminating on forgiveness, that means probably you haven't offered an apology. Or if you've offered an apology that's so pitiful in the face of what you have done that I'm struggling with it. Okay? Maybe I don't believe it. All right? I'm thinking about, I've been to groups, betrayal groups, where couples who have had betrayal in the relationship are working through it and trying to reconcile. And I think that's where a lot of people would fall. Well, the way that I look at it is nobody, whether I forgive them or not, is going to come and steal my peace. Okay? I'm not going to allow that because my peace is my responsibility. I can't control. It's windy outside right now, and I'm not trying to speak this into the universe, okay? It's windy right now, but if the giant tree in my front yard falls on my house, right? Am I gonna forgive the tree for doing damage to my house? Like, that doesn't even make sense. Looking at, okay, so this thing happened to me, this event happened, and what I can do about it is control my thought and feelings. That's the only thing I can control. I can let this event ruin my life. I can stay ruminating about how angry I am, how I'm never going to forgive them, etc. Or what I prefer to do is to say, all right, I might not be in a place where I can forgive that person for what they've done to me, but I can move on from it. It doesn't have to affect my life. I get to choose.
My mom, like when she was clean and sober for about 9 years before she passed away. So she, and that was the longest stretch of pretty much my whole life. So there was a lot of things, and I wanted to have a relationship with her. But I had to do a lot of work to be able to do that. And with the topic of forgiveness, like there were things that I was never going to get an apology for because she didn't even remember doing it. She was not even in the room. She was so far gone with substances that like it was a whole different person. And it was like it could be 15 years ago that it happened. So being able to move on and healing yourself without getting an apology or getting you know validation of that hurt, like you there's other ways to find that healing. And I think that's a really important thing for anybody who is working through things in their own growth and their own journey, because I agree with you. I don't think that you have to forgive, or like there's people who have hurt you in such a way that like there is no forgiveness. Like people who have been through
Right,
sexual assault or domestic
right,
violence, like there's no forgiving that. Like I cannot ever look at you and say, I forgive you for punching a hole in the wall next to my face. Like,
right,
you know, that like that was a real thing a partner of mine had done in my early 20s. I'll never forgive that. But I can
right,
move on and just know that you putting my energy towards you is just not even worth it, because that energy can go
right.
towards making a better life for myself.
100%. Exactly. Because it's almost like saying something outside of me. I need to forgive something outside of me to be able to be okay, when I can actually just be okay and also hold people accountable for their actions. Now, again, I'm not saying that you like don't need like you shouldn't forgive anyone, of course. Like it doesn't even cross my mind. Like if my husband does like forgets to do something or something silly, like I'm not really looking for an apology, and I also just know it's not malicious and he didn't mean to do that, etc. Now, I do express when I want an apology though. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of us struggle with setting that boundary. Like we struggle with saying, "Hey, that thing you did yesterday, that hurt my feelings and I thought about it and I wanted to tell you how it made me feel." And that conversation doesn't get had enough, to where you actually give the other person the chance to apologize. Now, again, in really extreme situations, right? Especially mental health issues, addiction, right? That person is probably maybe not at a point where they're ever going to apologize to you, right? And at that point, you have to make a decision, right? Do I move on? Am I allowing this person to have access to me? Um, and I realize that that's very complicated and tied up with a lot of other stories in your life. But the biggest message I could say is that you don't need to put time in forgiving someone if what they did to you doesn't warrant it.
Yeah,
You
I
can
agree.
simply say, "This is how I intend to move on." Like, again, um, my mother, I have a hard no contact boundary, and I remember the day I said it. And I will not forgive her for the actions that led up to that, right? But there's nothing I can do about it. She's a 60 something year old woman. She's not going to change. Struggles with the things that she struggles with.
She doesn't even
And
have the neuroplasticity at this age.
no, no, it's not going to happen. And I've tried over and over again. And we reached a point where I was like, you know what? What you did was not forgivable. And I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to have a peace of mind um, and control of my own narrative. Um, so again, it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy to do when you want to set like a hard boundary with someone, but you have to realize, like, again, if I forgive them, but I keep letting them into my life and I keep letting them hurt me, I'm not really doing anything, you
Yeah.
know?
When did it move from owning your story and and being authentic in yourself and writing and going the way that your purpose for your purpose, and having that shift to helping other women tell their story?
Yeah. This is great. I learn really well from bad examples. I don't know
No,
if
I get
anybody
that.
else feels that, where you're like, hmm. So I had entered a free mentorship program. It was like a free writing mentorship program. And I had been selected by a writing mentor to work with. It was actually ended up being during COVID. Like it started before COVID and COVID happened, which was kind of wild. But anyway, because of COVID, my mentor kind of fell off the face of the earth. She stopped responding. And like during the course of the mentorship, she probably helped me with like 7 chapters of like the 40 chapter book that I, had signed up to have her help on.
Rude.
And I mean, I understand it was a global pandemic. Not everybody,
Yeah.
whatever, but she could have just emailed me and said, like, hey, I'm really struggling. Again, having these hard conversations with people we struggle with. She could have just said, hey, I'm really struggling right now and I don't have a lot of focus because of COVID and I'm not going to be able to fulfill my mentorship opportunity to you. And I've been like, cool, totally understandable. Thank you so much. But that never happened. And so, what did I do instead? I really networked with the other writers in the mentorship program. So, like, I started asking a lot of questions. Some people were helping me with my book. And then I did a lot of self education. I was like, okay, let me dive into masterclass. What is that? And I just started consuming a bunch of content about writing and how people put narratives together and like how you put a plot together and how you develop character. And I just started like consuming, consuming, consuming. And the following year, I had grown in my writing so much that I applied to be a mentor.
Hell yeah.
And I was the best dang mentor. And I did all the things that my mentor didn't do for me. And now that woman who was my mentee back in 2021, the book that she was writing is going to be traditionally published in November of this year. Yeah, it's called Queen of Thieves.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh. Hold on. Why does that sound so familiar? What's the name? What's the name of the author?
Her name's Danae Plews.
I think I don't know. I feel like I saw it maybe it on an ARC reading group.
Probably. I mean, I'm sure you can request an arc of it at the well, maybe not at this point. But I've reposted it. I've reposted a lot of her stuff because I'm so dang proud of her. She is like persisted and continued to rewrite and make that manuscript better and better and better every time she went back to it. And now it's going to be traditionally published by Entangled. So
That's
um,
amazing.
yeah, yeah. And so I feel like, yeah. And the other one of the other men, I have her book on my shelf. One of the other women that I worked with, she was writing a contemporary, like women's fiction story based on some events that happened in her life. And she ended up publishing with a small press. So now I have her book. And I've worked with multiple women over the years. I've continued to work in that mentorship capacity. And then I was mentored myself for multiple years, still mentored. So I really believe in the power, again, of having a hype girl bestie, having an audacious woman who believes in your story, believes in your big dreams, can see it before you see it, and is there to support you as you're going through the process.
What would you suggest to somebody who's looking for that? Because I know there have been times in my life where I've like just felt like a lack of connection. I was like, didn't even know where to start. I mean, now I just kind of followed the things that I loved and I ended up in rooms with amazing women, but that doesn't
Yeah.
happen for everyone. So what suggestion would you have for somebody who's looking for that kind of community and doesn't know where to start?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the very first thing that I would do is write down all the things that you want, right? What do you want from these friends? You want support. You want someone who's audacious. Do you want like, what does your group, what does your tribe look like? Because your tribe might not look like my tribe, right? If you listen to this podcast, maybe it does, right?
Yeah.
Right? I want someone who's spiritual, not necessarily religious. I want women who believe in themselves, or at least know that they are meant for greatness. I want women who lift each other up and who have like just wild goals of their own, like that are just insanely talented and ambitious. And if you like just starting to describe how you want to feel when you're with them, do you want to travel with them? Do you want to meet them in person? Are you just looking for an online community because you've got small children and like going to meetups and stuff right now isn't in the cards? Whatever it is, I would just write it all down, how you want to feel when you're with them, and then attach like an emotion to it. Like, after I find these people, I know that I am going to be like moving to my next level self. This is like just starting to like connect to it. And then, you know, doing that and getting a clear picture of who you're looking for helps attract people to you. You know what I mean? Like the law
Yeah,
of attraction. So define who you're looking for.
that's great
Um,
advice.
yeah, to call them in. And then I feel like once you start naming the people, it's almost like when you're playing Punch Buggy,
Mm-hmm.
you start seeing all the VW Beetles. You're like, I didn't know there was this many on the road. Or when like you want to buy a new car and you're like, dang, I keep seeing that car everywhere. Well, if you write down who you're looking for, you're going to start finding them.
It's really cool. That's a good, yeah, I like that. So what happens to a woman when her story goes from living in her head to actually existing on a page? Like, have you noticed like the changes that happen?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Like firsthand and with other women. And I'll start out by saying, all writing is biographical, autobiographical. um, whether you're writing slutty vampires with witches, like I write, or you are writing, a memoir. Um, we pluck pieces of our story, um, our personal life experience, and we put them into the book. And that's what makes the tapestry of stories out there in the world so impressive and engaging, right? But no one can engage with your unique point of view if you don't tell it. So anyway, when you start writing, okay, I like to think about it like, in Greek mythology, there was at the river Styx, like when you die, they have the boatman. His name's like Charon, or however you pronounce it. I'm probably mispronouncing it.
It's gone, right?
That's what happens when you're a reader.
Yeah. You read the
Anyway,
words, you don't hear them. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So he ferries you right to the afterlife. And I really believe that
Oh,
when we
wait.
start writing, we are really becoming like that ferryman, right? We go to our pain, we go to our experience, we go to the past, and we ask for their stories because we want to take them out of into the land of, it's like a little bit of a reverse, I guess. Just stick with me on the metaphor. Into the land of the living, okay? We take them so they don't have to live in obscurity any longer.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the better analogy is like Coco walking across the flower bridge, okay?
Yeah.
Um, they don't have to, because what I talked about earlier, when a story carries a lot of shame around it, okay, you cringe every time you think about it. But when we pull it out of the dark, when we pull it out of obscurity and we bring it into the light, now you can think about it in a whole new way, right? Now you have transformed what was once something that was like festering inside of you. Spoiler alert, the things you think are healed, go ahead and write about them. You're going
Hmm.
to find out just how unhealed they are, okay?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Instead of letting that thing fester in obscurity, we are extracting it from our soul and we're offering it up to people, not for a circus, but for the sake of enriching and deepening that of human expression and the human experience.
Too, I
Um,
think that once people start reading or you have other people read and experience your story and you hear somebody go, oh my God, I didn't know anybody else went through this, or oh my God, I did, like, it's so validating to somebody else to see that like you might have had a thought process that you didn't realize somebody else did, and now it's like, wow, we now have a bond and we now have some community and companionship over the fact that I wasn't alone in that experience.
100%. I mean, we bond over so many things. I mean, you and I bonded because we're Virgos. Oh,
Yeah.
immediately, you get me, you understand me. Do you know?
Yeah.
Like, it can be that surface level, but imagine how much stronger it is when it's something way deeper, right? Because there's a
Yeah.
lot of people who are born in August and September you know, during the time that the Virgo season is. But how many have felt the things that you have felt,
Well, just like
right?
earlier when I was talking about my experience of like, not having resources and like how we had very different stories, but the feeling was the same.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly that. Not everyone will have done the things that you've done, or the things that you're writing about. But when you write something and it lands with someone and they say, I'll tell you, as a writer, there is no better feeling than someone coming to you with an underlined thing in your book and they said, this hit me in the chest. Like, I have a line in one of my books where I say, I am the consequence. And it's the main character saying, you think I am the problem, but I am actually the consequence of your behavior.
You can't see me right now, but I'm like
Yeah.
snaps, claps, all of
Yes.
that because that I love that. Like you think I'm the
Yes.
problem, but actually I'm the consequence of your actions. So I'm
Yes.
here to, just deliver what karma you brought on yourself.
Yeah. And that, right, that is the thing that comes to root for me. People are like, oh, I wonder why I don't have a very good relationship with that person. Well, have you been working on that relationship with that person? If you ignore your garden, it's all gonna die. But that comes out of some deeply wounded place inside of me, right? That had like poor relationships with my parents growing up. I can find that story, that nugget. And while I'm not writing a memoir, right, I write fiction, I'm taking these stories inside of me that only I can tell. They're my hurt, my pain. But when I express them onto the page, it bonds me to people in a way that I cannot explain. Like even you just saying, I am the consequence line, but it has so much meaning wrapped inside of it. And when you write, you're reclaiming that, right? You're
Yeah.
saying, yes,
I mean,
this happened to me.
for instance too, like Sarah J. Mass, I don't know if you're an Akatar girly. But
I'm not a ACOTAR girly, but I am very, very familiar with the fan base and the books.
well, there's in the last book that is currently out, there is a scene and a character Nesta who has been through some horrible things throughout the series. They're on this mountain hike and she's having this breakdown about her trauma essentially. And Sarah J. Maas said that like that was a hike that she went on with her husband, and those are the
Yeah,
thoughts that she was having on that hike, and that was her mental breakdown, and she wrote
yeah,
it into Nesta because like while she was going through that, all she could see was that character,
yeah,
like who went through all of these things too. So like the when you're even if you're writing, even if it's nonfiction, you're still putting your heart and soul and your experiences, and we write the things we know, they say, right? So
yeah.
I mean, I don't claim to be a writer, but I would love to write a book one day. That would be amazing.
Yes, and you should. Whether it's fiction or nonfiction, honestly, there's nothing more cathartic. I mean, the first book that I wrote took place in like the first nonfiction book I wrote, I'll say that. Or not, I'm sorry, not fan fiction. I wrote Harry Potter fan fiction before I wrote original fiction. Um, but the first original fiction book I wrote, um, I wrote about a that was a male main character, but I wrote about he was from Flint, Michigan, which if you know anything about Flint, Michigan, it had been like ravaged by the decline of the auto industry, along with um, neglect, and then it kind of all accumulated with the Flint water crisis, where people were getting very sick because of the water was contaminated. And so I wrote about this kid who didn't, come from very much, spoiler alert, sounds a lot like me, and who um, lived in the shadow of, these major universities. If you didn't know, U of M sits very close to Flint, Michigan. It's very isolated from other people because if you go to Michigan, you have to go there on purpose. So
Yeah.
nobody like travels through Michigan. So anyway, I took elements of my upbringing, right, and my lived experience and things that I was passionate about, and started crafting a narrative, like an urban fantasy. And so, I tell anybody, it doesn't matter if you can't put. I mean, I didn't know that the I and I'm needed to be capitalized when I first started writing. Didn't know that. It
Oh,
doesn't matter. Okay? I would prefer the words be raw. I would prefer the sentences have a lot of emotion attached to them.
yeah. It's something that I've thought about. We'll have to get together and talk about it because I definitely I feel like I could write something.
Oh,
That's a
definitely.
that's a
Women are
whole
storytellers.
yeah. So if somebody wanted to work with you and wanted to get their story down on paper or get a hold of your books, like where would they be able to find you?
Yeah, so I my author account is Ainsley James Books on Instagram. If you just even Google Ainsley James, you're gonna find me. My coaching account is AJ underscore hype girl bestie. And that's where I work on with my coaching content. My mission is to inspire women everywhere to reclaim their voice and embrace their ancestral roots of storytelling. And I see it as like my job to work with women with a story to tell, really get past their excuses, and actually do the dang thing. And so that's my mission in life. That's what I see. That's what I see as yeah, what I do. So yeah, I work in 6-month containers with folks, where I assist them with the pre-writing process, the drafting process, and learning how to either build out a memoir, a self-help, or a fictionalized novel.
And you said you have a website?
Yep, I do. Just AinsleyTechJames.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you so much for taking the time to speak with me and putting up with all of my technical difficulties as somebody who was born in the 1900s, who
Fine.
who like your advice just started, and I'm figuring it out along the way.
That's all
Um,
right.
and I super appreciate you being here. Usually, I end an episode with journal prompts or reflection points for people. Do you have maybe a journal prompt or reflection question or two that you would like to give the listeners?
Oh, I love this. So as a reflection point, I would just say, where am I holding shame in my life? What story sits inside my body? Where can I feel it? My throat, my temples, my chest, my stomach. And then what is it? Could I write down even 3 sentences about that story and why it feels so shameful to me? Because I'll tell you what, it's magic when you actually write it down. It's gonna feel yucky. You're gonna maybe want to puke, but once it's down, it's out of your system. So that will be the one. Where am I still holding shame in my body, and what's the story surrounding it? And 2, I would go back to, who are the people in my life that I want to call in?
I
Write
love
that
that.
down. Write down who in the world am I trying to attract, and what are they going to help me accomplish?
Beautiful. The questions I have you been waiting on forgiveness, either giving or receiving it, before allowing yourself to move forward? And what would healing look like if that was no longer the requirement? If your story became something tangible, something someone else could hold and read and see for themselves, what would you want them to feel? And finally, what would you do, say, create, or become if Audacity was your default setting instead of fear?
Very good. I love
Beautiful.
that. Love that.
Well, you can find Miss Ainsley James, or AJ, if she'll allow you to call her, like,
Please.
if you're special like me. No. At the aforementioned places. If you'd like to find more of me, you can find me at Hex and Hair on Instagram. And as always, thank you for sitting with us on the Crossroads. And as you move into this week, be gentle with yourself, be kind to yourself, and I can't wait to see you again on the Crossroads. Bye.
Bye.